and the chair of the Young Professional Network. We are so excited to be talking about well-being throughout this pandemic this morning. We'll be covering 3 topics, mental health, financial, as well as community through the lens of a local business owner. The format today will be in a Q&A style, and we will also have the opportunity for you to post some questions at the end as well. If you do have any questions, please feel free to use the chat function. If you happen to see a question that you want answered that's already been posed, you can simply double click it, put a thumbs up, and we will try our best to get to it at the end of our session today. So without further ado, I will introduce our 3 panelists. Our panelists today are Sarah Sytsma, the mental health lead at Family Counseling and Support Services. Sarah is a registered social worker and has been working with individuals and families for over 15 years in the Guelph and Wellington area. She has a passion for educating and supporting others in the area of mental health. Welcome, Sarah. Our next panelist who will speak on financial well-being is Alex Delillo. Alex is a tax manager at RLB Chartered Accountants. Alex discovered his passion for accounting while in high school and further pursued passion while obtaining his honors Bachelor of Business Administration. At RLB, Alex works with his diverse set of clients as a member of the tax team, while also gaining valuable exposure and experience on assurance engagements. Thanks for joining us, Alex. And finally, our 3rd panelist here to speak on business and community well-being is Derek Boudreau, local business owner of Reina, Royal Electric, Jimmy Jazz, The Local, and Lion Financial Services. In his various roles, he is responsible for finances, business development, and construction aspects of business. His passion in creating relationships with customers, clients, and the community is extremely evident through his membership of the Guelph Gives Committee, which he's been on for the past 4 years. Thanks for joining us, Derek.
Thank you.
Lovely. Well, we will dive right into it. A big topic throughout the pandemic that has been in the media and a lot of conversations has been around well-being of mental health. And there's been a lot of great reports and data out there. And recently, a Canadian Red Cross report came out revealing that the pandemic has left nearly half of young adults in Canada experiencing excessive anxiety and symptoms of depression. So Sarah, could you tell us how young professionals can work through these struggles and keep themselves safe throughout this time?
Yeah. COVID-19 has disrupted our daily lives and made everyday activities really challenging. These challenges, combined with general uncertainty about what will happen during the pandemic, can create feelings of sadness, fear, nervousness, and grief. We have lost the way of life that we once knew it, our support systems in the way that we knew it, our coping systems in the way that we knew it, and it has made going to the grocery store that much more difficult, going to see friends. So these feelings are all really normal during this time of high stress and crisis. And this prolonged stress can cause the perfect storm for the symptoms that came out in this Red Cross study of increased anxiety and depression. There are a lot of things that we can do to support our mental well-being in this time and kind of buffer those symptoms of anxiety and depression. The first thing that we can really do is show ourselves compassion and know that we're all going through this together. This is not something that we could prepare for mentally or that we knew how we would respond. It's a unique response. And so it's important for us to support one another and to acknowledge that maybe we're not feeling like ourselves. Maybe this surprises you. Maybe you're a little more sad than what you're used to, or you're ruminating on your thoughts more than, or you're having difficult sleeping, and that's okay. Some other ways is our support networks, formal and informal. If some of these symptoms are not normal or familiar to us, we may not have ever had to be as intentional as we are right now at knowing where our support networks are. So some formal support networks could be a counselor, or reaching out to a doctor. One of our our walk-in, our call-ins that we have, same-day counseling is another example. Maybe the food bank is something that you need to reach out to that you never thought you had to. And informal supports are things like being more intentional about our friends or touching base with our colleagues, that usually life just presented it, that we would get together with them. Maybe we met them at the park, or, we just met them throughout our work day. And now we need to actually be more intentional about that in our days, to be able to have that. Some other ways is to remember that feelings are not linear. Grief and depression and anxiety is not always constant. It can change. And so today you might be feeling really negative or stuck in your thoughts or sad, but tomorrow might be different, right? And so just, we call that riding the wave, as a therapist. And so that the wave is going to peak, it's going to come up, and then you kind of ride that wave, and it's going to come back down at some point. It might go back up, but it's going to come back down. So being able to acknowledge that and be aware of that.
Awesome. I think that's such a powerful statement, that feelings aren't linear, and showing that compassion to ourselves and to others, because it is, I think a lot of us are riding that wave and are having to utilize or access services that we previously might not have had to, right? So, and in that almost that same line, Alex, my next question is for you, because we have a lot of people that are experiencing a different financial situation, whether that is a lessened income or now having to utilize government support. So how can we effectively manage our finances and personal budgets during this time?
Yeah, there hasn't been many people that I've talked to over the last 8 to 10 weeks that haven't been impacted financially. And so with our lives changing, and it's oftentimes on a day-to-day basis, we really need to revisit what our revised financial situation looks like. Some of us are on variable compensation, some of us are still employed, some of us are collecting the CERB benefits. So we need to really look at, on a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, what our income is going to be going forward. I encourage a lot of people to create or update their budgets. Some families have a home budget, some families don't, because the money's always come in at the beginning of the month or in the middle of the month, and at the end of the month there's always been enough to cover all of the expenses for the family. And now more important than ever is going to be tracking those, tracking your income and tracking those expenses, and further to that, actually tracking what the actual expenses to the budget. So the common example I always use is when I talk to young professionals, they say, okay, I'm going to budget for my utilities, I'm going to budget for my internet, I'm going to budget for entertainment. And they say, okay, entertainment, $100 this month. And then that first Friday, they go out to Royal Electric and they spend $100, and they wake up Saturday morning, and there goes their entertainment budget for the month. So if they don't update that budget to realize that, okay, well, maybe entertainment expense is not $100 a month. Maybe it's $400 a month. Does that fit? We need to make those changes, because a lot of us eat out. A lot of us want to go out with our friends. And so if we're not making those changes, then really we're not doing any justice to ourselves. So now more important than ever is going to be actually tracking what you know your income is going to be for a particular month. Track what your actual and budgeted expenses are. I suggest looking back 3 to 6 months. So if you own your own home, look at what your utility bills are, look what your mortgage payments are, and those should be the first things that come off what your projected income is. And then from there, you'll know what's available to you, whether you want to put it towards savings or if there's other costs that you feel are important to yourself. The important thing is that change may also be coming further to what we've already experienced. And so those that are currently collecting CERB, for example, that only lasts for 4 months. So if you're only budgeting for the next month or two or 3 or 4, that may not take you to the end of the year. So what I encourage is do an annual budget and be honest with yourself. Know exactly where your expenses lie. We all have car insurance, almost all of us. Some of us have house insurance. Some of us know that we're going to have our utility payments on an annual basis, on a monthly basis, and some utilities are paid on a bi-monthly basis. So line that out in your budget and know exactly which months you're going to get hit with the various expenses, and be honest with yourself. The one thing I've always pushed with family, friends, colleagues, whomever, is to create an emergency fund. So put 3 to 6 months worth of salary aside, throw it into TFSA, put it into an interest savings bank account, and save that for a rainy day. And now is the time that that emergency fund comes into play. I mean, no one could have predicted this pandemic. But outside of this pandemic, we all face challenges in life, whether it's job loss, medical emergencies or whatnot. And it's important for us to have those emergency funds available to us. So that way we can maintain our mortgage payments, we can maintain our rent payments, we can maintain our lifestyles. So I would say during this time, the biggest thing is going to be continuing to update our budgets, be honest with ourselves, compare those against actual, and see where our current lifestyle has been impacted and where we need to make changes.
That's awesome. I think those are some really great tangible takeaways of creating a monthly and a yearly budget, looking back 3 to 6 months to make sure that it's actually an informed budget and the numbers are accurate, and the idea of emergency fund, right? No one ever wants that rainy day, and unfortunately I think we're in the midst of it. Is there any other strategies that you would suggest?
Yeah, so I would say that our world has become very automated. So some of us are still very deliberate at getting our monthly bills either in the mail or via email and paying them manually. But a lot of us have a lot of our expenses automated. You got your Apple Music, your Spotify, we all have our Uber app and whatnot. And so what I would say is look at, after you do your budget, look at where you could potentially trim some fat. If what your income is now under this pandemic, if it's reduced and you think your budget's going to be fairly tight, where can you trim some fat? So the biggest one is subscriptions. We all have a bunch of subscriptions, to whether or not it's for music, Netflix, newspapers, whatnot. Look at what's really important to you, what do you need, and where can you trim the fat. Now, it doesn't have to be forever. It can be for a couple of months. It could be for a year, and you can pick it back up. But more now than ever, we're going to have to look at trimming those expenses. The one big thing is entertainment expense and food costs that a lot of us incur. That's, besides household expenses, that's usually the biggest expense to us on a monthly basis. I know for myself, colleagues, whatnot, some people like to go out for lunch each day. They don't prepare lunch, so that adds up over a monthly, quarterly, annually basis. And now that we're all stuck in our homes, some of us are forced to either cook at home or continue to eat out. And so it is very, very, very important during this time to continue to support one another and our community. And myself included, I try to eat out every once in a while to support the local businesses because they are struggling. But I find one way to easily trim some of the fat is start to prepare more homemade meals at home. So look at what you thoroughly enjoy, what can you know, or what do you know how to make? And if you don't, there's apps out there like Pinterest that can give you the recipes. And so use Flip, look what's on sale. And the one thing that people have provided feedback historically on is that when they push what would be otherwise their eating out expenses and their entertainment expenses to working towards preparing more meals at home, they see a lot of savings. I know years back, I used to have a few colleagues that, at least 4 days a week they're eating out lunch wise. And once they created a routine about doing meal prep on Sundays and whatnot, they really saw their overall food costs decrease. And that contributed to them ending up having some savings. So that's one area I would say is trim the fat. And like I said, you don't have to eliminate all your entertainment expenses, or you don't have to trim all your fat, but really be honest with yourself as to how much do you know is coming in on a monthly basis now under this pandemic, and how much can you actually afford. So.
That's great. Well, you heard it here. Alex is ready to give out recipes to anybody on the call, not only accounting advice, also a recipe connoisseur.
Reach out to me and I'd be happy to promote some recipes on.
Amazing. And I love what you said about supporting local. I think that has been definitely one of the beautiful things that have come from this, is seeing people really rally around our community. And I always say that Guelph is the best community. There's something that's special in the water here. And that's definitely been highlighted through this time. And you teed me up perfectly for my next question for Derek. Being that local business owner, what has your experience been owning a local business during the pandemic? And how has it affected you and your employees?
To be honest, these have been extremely challenging times. As new information gets provided, things are changing on a daily basis. For us, we've shut down 2 of our 4 locations. We've had to do large-scale layoffs, which are difficult to do. We've built relationships and kind of tried to create a culture in our workplace with staff, and it's really kind of unfortunate of what's happened, but ultimately safety comes first, and we've had to make sure that are trying to make changes that our businesses can survive. These are kind of unprecedented times, and we're doing what we can and trying to be ready to pivot in any direction possible, just to make sure that we stay relevant and stay afloat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's it. It's uncharted waters for everyone. And I know I've seen some things that you guys have had to do, but can you talk a bit about how you need to implement some adaptability and how to be resilient as a business throughout this time?
Well, our business has changed from generally being, fairly consistently busy. We have gone to a full takeout aspect, which has had its challenges. It probably took about a week to get everything reined in, whether it's supplies and also managing staff, labor costs, food expenses. At the time of the, around mid-March there, we had a surplus of food that we were trying to get out, surplus of beverages. Really, I think the best thing that a company can do to stay relevant is to make sure that you have a presence on social media so that you can keep your customers updated on what's new or what's coming, whether that's, Instagram, Facebook, an email blast if you have one of those, but really try and do your best to connect or stay connected with your clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely an opportunity as we're all in our homes or wherever we are. We're in front of screens a lot more and on social, and I think there is a great opportunity for businesses to get that exposure. I was secretly hoping you guys were going to talk about your margaritas in a jar. I know that's been one of the great services you guys provide.
That's not my creation, but they're good. They're going fast. So if you want to use some of your entertainment expenses, we'd be happy to have you.
Well worth. I'm sure Alex would encourage that as well. Perfect. Okay, so changing lanes a little bit back into the mental health discussion. What would you say, Sarah, what are the main challenges that young professionals are currently facing, and how do you think this differs from other age demographics?
Sorry, I forgot to go on mute.
Okay.
The challenges of this. So I think that's a really great question, because there are some unique challenges for young professionals compared to other demographics. Some of the main ones are that there's extra pressure for young working professionals to do more frontline work sometimes, right, than others who may have other seniority or, you know, have more flexibility in their job. And so that creates stress, right? Not all working professionals have the option of working remotely, and they have to come into the office. Maybe they're not even in a secluded office, maybe they're in a cubicle, right? Or they are working directly with people and still having to interact in that way with PPE, with whatever their employers have provided them to stay safe. So the other challenge that this demographic may face compared to others is that there is an assumption that young professionals are more techie, are more up to date with today's technology and all of its different platforms, which is simply not true. It can be a challenge for young professionals, just as it can be for any other demographic at this point. So that extra pressure, maybe they want them to be a leader, maybe, you know, they're delegating certain meetings to them over Zoom, but that professional doesn't know that, and maybe that's difficult to express depending on your workplace culture or personality in this time. So I think that it's really important to acknowledge that and to be able to advocate for yourself, and also for those who are not working professionals, not to assume that, but to rather ask and go about that. The other thing is that this stress is causing our brains to work that much harder, right? There might be an assumption, because young people are on technology a lot, that it's not impacting them as much, right? So taking those breaks from the screen is going to be really important, you know, from your work day and your meetings, so that you can stay present and stay your best self in this time, because the impact is across all demographics, not just one particular one. The other challenge for young professionals, if you also have a young family, that comes into play as well, compared to someone maybe in an older generation that has older children, or children who have left the home, or who don't have children at all. You know, that can present itself an issue as you're trying to maybe figure out daycare situations, you're trying to figure out your finances, trying to figure out schooling with your kids at home, and you still have the same demands for yourself at work. Is going to present itself a challenge. As if you have no kids, maybe there's that assumption from your employer that you can ramp up your workload right now. And you know, that's simply not true in all cases, because we do handle stress, as I spoke about before, differently and uniquely, that individual may not be able to take on that extra workload. You know, even though maybe they don't have kids, or they don't seem to have the same stressors as other people do. So I think assumptions and expectations come into it and disadvantage sometimes young professionals right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a big piece of it. There's a lot of assumptions, and Sarah, I think those were a lot of great points, some that I hadn't even thought of. And so how can we be proactive when it comes to our mental health and navigating these situations?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I recently read something. It was a comic, and I'm not going to reference it fully here, but basically it was the different stages of COVID, right? And the first stage, when they close stuff down and they're saying, okay, work from home, or less client direct, or kids are off school, you know, and we kind of had that. We all internally celebrated. This is going to be great. We're going to get to work from home. We can stay in our pajamas. You know, we'll have more family time, or I'll have more me time. And we went through that. And now, so many weeks in, we're realizing we're done. This has served its purpose, and we're ready to move forward. And so you're right. We're having to be a little bit more proactive. And in that. And some of the ways that we can do that are ways that we know how to be healthy already and being more intentional. So eating those balanced meals, right? What we put in our body is what's fueling our bodies and our minds, right? So maybe some meals that Alex has for us might really support that. You know, and we've all heard of the COVID-15. So, you know, that is a reality in our everyday life now, is that we may have gained a little bit more weight because we're not moving as much, and maybe we're not eating what we should be, you know, at this time. So paying attention to how we fuel our bodies is going to be important. How we fuel our minds is going to be important as well. We're not going to be stimulated in the same way, right, as what we were beforehand. And so watching 10 hours of Netflix may not be the best way to spend our time, although it might be okay some days just to kind of veg. But if you're doing that every day, you know, you're not gonna stimulate your mind and body that in the way that it needs to be healthy. Our social media diet is another big one. It is a tendency when we're stressed about something to lock into that information and to watch the newscast, listen to podcasts about it, talk about it in our narrative with our friends and family and colleagues, but really watch how much time you're dedicating to COVID. This is slow moving, and not tuning into news for a day or two, or talking about it at the dinner table every night is not going to be, you're not going to miss some major headliner. It's around, but it may give yourself a bit of that break. Another thing, we mentioned the margaritas, which I have tasted, Derek, and are fantastic. But looking at alcohol and non-prescribed drugs in moderation and paying attention. How much are you using that as a coping skill? Or how much, you know, what's healthy? How is it impacting your life? And then, of course, getting enough activity in. Those feel-good endorphins are activated when we are physically active with our bodies. The recommendation to get that full effect is about 30 to 45 minutes of a day, and that could be done in your home, or it can be done out in nature, going for a walk, doing a video, but being physically active can also help metabolize some of that cortisol, that stress hormone in our bodies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think those are such great suggestions, and taking that time to check in and see where we are with our nutritious meals or exercise and things like that. I know as you're talking, I'm getting a visual of me. I know I was having a glass of wine, binging Tiger King, and the next day I'm like, you know what? I think I need to toss in a walk, and it was just being okay that I needed that relaxing time, but doing that check-in. And I think those are some really wonderful suggestions that we can all do. We all have that ability to pop outside and go for a walk and do those things. So I appreciate that, and I love so much now that Alex is dubbed as the recipe health king here. And Alex, one of the $1 million question I'm sure you're hearing a lot is now a good time to invest?
Yeah, it is the $1 million question. I mean, it's rare these days to talk with other professionals, especially in the accounting and finance world, without the question coming up, you know, it's now a good time to invest. And so I'm not an investment advisor, but I do pay close attention to the markets and whatnot. And I would say it's a yes and no question. And I would say it depends on your investment horizon. So if you have excess cash now and you have a long-term investment horizon, then I think there is certainly some opportunity in the marketplace right now to invest. Education, I would say, is the number one thing. Know what you're investing in. When a friend tells you or you read something, ensure you feel comfortable with it. Don't go into it blinded. I would say that can cause additional risk for you. And you need to understand that if you do have that long-term investment horizon, is long-term in your mind, a year, 3 years, 5 years, And are you okay with some bumps and valleys? So there's a lot of advisors and economists out there that say there might be one more slip in the markets this fall, but it's unclear as to how they're going to react. I mean, it all depends on what happens south of the border a little bit and overseas. So I would say that if you're long-term investment horizon, then yes. If you're short-term investment horizon, then I would say no. I would say I would stay away from it. I would, if you have any excess cash and you think that you may need it in the short term, then I would really strongly push for putting into a GIC or an interest-bearing investment account, just because you don't want to risk any of your capital. And I want to go back to the concept of excess cash and touching back on what we talked before about budgets. So although you may generate excess cash, in the next 1, 2, 3 months, really look at what the security is of your current employment or your business to see whether or not you're going to need that excess cash in the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months, whatever it may be. Because although you may have an emergency fund, you may have excess cash now, if you're going to need that in a few months, because either you're currently on CERB or the security of your current employment situation is up in the air, it's going to be important to continue to maintain that emergency fund because you may need to tap into it. So I would say if you are going to invest and you want the flexibility, I mean, the one thing I push a lot of my clients and friends, colleagues, family members, if you want flexibility and you have not fully utilized your TFSA, use your TFSA. It creates the most amount of flexibility for you to contribute. You're allowed to invest in the financial markets within a TFSA, and if you need the money, it allows you to pull it out. I would say a lot of people, and especially millennials, they like the idea of the RRSP. It's because you get the deduction on your personal tax return, you get some tax back, you get a refund typically when you file your personal tax return. But what ends up happening is that money's trapped in there, and if you need it and you want that flexibility, then you may be required to pull it out in short order. And depending on when you pull it out, you could actually pay more tax than you got back when you contributed. It all depends on your income for the particular year. And so it doesn't have the flexibility that you may want. So if you are going to invest, I do strongly encourage using your tax-free savings account. More Canadians have a tax-free savings account than an RRSP. However, the average balance is 5 times higher than an RRSP than a TFSA. It's the most underutilized tool out there. Although the majority of Canadians have it, they open an account, they put $5,000, $6,000 in, and then they just let that grow, and they don't realize that each year their contribution grows. So that would be my take on it. Education is the greatest tool that we're given, and so read articles online, talk to friends, reach out to a financial planner, reach out to an investment advisor. They can provide further insights as to what they feel fits best for your particular situation and given the current market situation.
Mm-hmm. And I agree. I think education and articles are such a big piece. Is there any other hacks that you want to share with young professionals who are looking to manage their finances better?
Yeah, so what I would say is that I'm a little bit biased. I charge everything to my credit card. And the reason being is that majority of financial institutions have finance trackers built in as part of their online platform. And so instead of you getting an Excel spreadsheet open and going back through all your credit card statements and trying to divvy up what's relating to your house and utilities and what's entertainment and what's groceries, it does a lot of that for you. Millennials also love to travel. And so oftentimes there's a lot of travel credit cards out there. So with you charging it to your credit card to allow you to track your expenses, you can also gain points to allow you to travel. But that's not everything. I mean, you have to take credit with a grain of salt. You have to understand your own particular situation. And so going back to what your budget looks like, if you have everything automated and everything fits within your budget and you charge it to your credit card, then it's easy to track what your expenses are. But people can go quite crazy with a credit card based on the limits their financial institution may give them, and that's how they can spiral out of control. So you really do need to ensure that you are managing your finances appropriately. So budget accordingly, track your actual. But that is one tool. A lot of the financial institutions have finance trackers, and so it is an underutilized tool that they do provide. And so if you do have any questions, reach out to your financial institution and they can let you know. But it does provide you that insight. Now, it's not perfect, but it gives you a general sense. So that would be one hack. The other would be is as we continue to progress as young professionals, our income tends to increase. And so the one thing that I always push for is when those income increases occur, identify what your goals are and what you want your forced savings to be. We have the tendency as our income increases to increase our expenses, but that doesn't get us any further with respect to our goals or progressing financially. So what I would say is that if you can create and set up automatic savings such that each month when your pay comes in, a portion of it gets put over into a savings account, whether or not it's your TFSA, your RSP, but that forced savings, that will control the amount that sits in your bank account that allows you to spend on a monthly basis and can allow you to track that. You have to be very deliberate. There's a lot of great apps out there that allow you to do forced savings and some that will allow you to invest it. There's other apps out there that allow you to help manage your finances. Mint is one. I know another, going back to investing, Wealthsimple is very, very popular right now if people want forced savings to go into an investment account. So that's what I would say. The other thing is I would create a net worth template, and for two purposes. One, it allows you to evaluate on a monthly or quarterly or annual basis whether or not you're growing personally and financially. And it also allows you to understand what you've built up. And if you're going to apply for a mortgage, the banks want to know what you own. And so having this net worth template will allow you to identify what you do own. It forces you to track and document exactly what you do own, your assets and your liabilities. And then it allows for you, when you meet with the bank for a mortgage, just to hand over a simple piece of paper. So it's something that I do on a monthly basis just to track where I'm progressing financially. Some people have various bank accounts, or they may have received money as an inheritance and whatnot. And so if you move money from one account to another, you may not necessarily be having savings, but rather just shifting your own money from various accounts. And the net worth template allows you to track where you're progressing financially, as well as it documents everything you have. I use it a lot with the baby boomer generation because I do a lot of estate and succession planning. So it allows for them to identify what they do own, create a legacy plan to transition to the next generation. But for millennials, the big thing is am I generating savings, and what can I do next to progress financially? Do I want to buy a house? Do I have enough? What do I need to keep aside? So that's what I would say. There's a lot of great free resources out there in order to get the financial acumen that you may want to create budgets, invest. Motley Fool's one that I particularly use for investing. There's a lot of great articles on there. You do have to take it with a grain of salt. You have to understand your investment horizon. But for For those that are interested in investing, I would say Motley Fool is one. And if you want apps, Mint is one that's great for tracking finances outside of what your financial institution may have. And then for those that are looking for forced savings, Wealthsimple is one.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. I've used some of those apps in the past as well, and I find them they're very user friendly, which I think is a really big piece. Sometimes when you're talking about your finances, it can be a bit overwhelming. So, yeah. Derek, so what advice would you give to young professionals who have their own business right now?
Good question. The best advice that I could give to somebody is just to keep striving forward. I mean, every day is a challenge, and some days are good and bad. Building a network of people, whether it's employees or colleagues or family around you, I think is very important. People that you can rely on, and whether it's just, venting to somebody or somebody that's going to help you out professionally. It could even be somebody who's in the same field as you or competitors. So, you get their point of view, stuff like that. I think another key factor is remembering to ask for help if you need it. If you're self-employed, you may not have a network of people to rely on, but I'm sure, we all have friends. And generally I find that if you ask someone for help, that they're willing to lend a hand. The other, I would recommend, spending time or having employees spend time to create that online presence, especially right now with people not going out as much. And finally, my main thing is something I live by. It's called eating the frog. The idea behind that is you have your to-do list every day. I carry one in my pocket. Do that toughest one right off the bat, because in my opinion, it sets you free for the rest of the day, and then it's downhill from there. Yeah.
We've all been there where we have that certain thing that we need to do that's on our mind, and sometimes we push it to the end of the day, but I agree with swallowing your frog and doing it first thing in the morning. Is there any other advice that you would give to help support local businesses in our community right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of biased just because of the industry that we're in, the hospitality industry. But for example, ordering your favorite meal or drink, whichever, donating or purchasing a gift card for future use, picking up where possible. For us in particular, we pay large fees to third-party delivery companies that kind of, wipe out any profits. And then the easiest ones, like leave a Google review from maybe like a past time that you were in, like, comment, or share things that you see on social media. And then, subscribe to monthly email letters, whether you read them or not. What other businesses have done, including ourselves, is offer discounts to, whether it's healthcare workers or people that are in the industry, or, like even a lot of people don't talk about right now, like the grocery store workers are really working hard and they don't get much recognition at the moment. So that would kind of be ways that I think that are relatively easy to do, and a lot of them, don't cost any money either. Just clicking a button, you're already on there. Why not?
Yeah, I saw what Royal Electric was doing for our frontline workers, and you guys really came to the forefront of that very early on, offering that food support, and that's so kind and so generous, and exactly like we were talking about, of really rallying around for the community. So thank you, Derek, for that, and for the entire team at Royal and Reina and the other organizations for supporting our frontline workers right now. We really appreciate it. And I guess the last formal question for everyone, and then we'll go to you first, Sarah, is what advice do you as an individual have for young professionals?
Yeah, so really, again, it's acknowledging that this is a weird time. How we do everything is going to be differently. It's just going to be different. We're going to have to do things differently. So be intentional with asking yourself, what do I need today? right? Do I need to talk to my employer or set different limits in my day? Do I need a break? Am I bored? That is a question that we're asking. Some of us are bored. We're used to filling our days out with people and things, and that's not possible right now in the same way. And so asking yourself, what do I need today, and being intentional about going forward. One thing I love about about young professionals, millennials, is that they go after what they want, right? Very highly driven and motivated generation. And so use that in this time. And if you need some downtime, or you have EAP benefits, or what you need, then go for it. Advocate for yourself. If you do have more capacity for work right now and you're bored, sign up. There's lots of free webinars going on right now, and different educational resources that used to cost hundreds of dollars that universities are saying, do this for free online. So you can use this time to your benefit if you're intentional and really take that space to ask yourself, what do I need? That's what I would say.
Awesome. Alex, what about you?
Yeah, I would say that right now more than ever, we have to be very intentional as to what we do. And most importantly, I think now a lot of us have some more time on our plates. Some others, are still very, very busy throughout this pandemic. But what I would say is my advice would be for young professionals is evaluate what is important to you and set those goals, whether or not they're professional or they're for personal growth or they're for financial growth. But set those goals and ensure that you're evaluating those goals and tracking your progress on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis to ensure that you're getting to where you want to be. So if it is to buy a house within the next 5 years, how are you going to get there? Set those goals. Further to Sarah's comment, there's a lot of resources out there and a lot of education out there that's either free or discounted. So if there's something that you wanted to do to contribute to your personal growth and you have the time now, take advantage of it. Now is the time. But once we get past this pandemic, just ensuring that you continue on that progress. There's going to be bumps in the road in life, but ensuring that you're continually moving through and progressing, I say is what's most important. Don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. Take risks. Right now we're in the middle of a pandemic, so taking risks, you're really gonna have to evaluate whether or not it's the right time, or if the right time is in 6, 12, 18 months down the road. But don't be afraid to make mistakes. I always say, you're going to scrape your knees at different times in life. We all learned how to ride a bike. We all didn't just hop on a bike and go. We all fell off. We all scraped our knees, and it's going to be the same way professionally. Some have said that millennials are going to have 5 different careers in their lifetimes, not 5 different jobs, 5 different careers. So if what you're doing currently doesn't fit, don't be afraid to take the leap and try something different. That's what I would say. Mm-hmm. The other thing I also say is don't try to be someone that you're not currently. So don't compare yourself to others and try to be exactly like them and live up to them. A quote I heard last week is just because you don't wear designer clothes doesn't mean you're poor. Your purpose is to provide for yourself and your family, not impress a community. So really taking that to heart. It doesn't have to be designer clothes. It can be going out. It can be going on fancy trips. You have to really evaluate yourself. Is that what's important to you? Does that fit within your goals? Do you have the financial situation that allows for it? What's important to you, and does it align? That would be my biggest piece of advice.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Living a life that is authentic and true to who you are, right? Even throughout this. Derek, what about you?
I think those are great comments by Alex and Sarah. what I would say is persevere, stay calm, and most importantly, do something every day to relieve some stress. And from my experience, stress is a killer. That's why I wear a hat. I've got no hair left. And just remember that tomorrow is another day. If you don't get everything done that you wanted to do or striving to do, the sun is going to come up again tomorrow, and just give it your all. But yeah, stress relief for me is probably the largest factor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we actually, we got a question in the chat here, and it is for you, Derek. How has your leadership skills changed? How have you been able to keep your team motivated?
Well, let me see here. So I feel like with our staff, whether it's just being there for them, whether it's, being able to help them with something personally, as well as, professionally, we've been trying to let our staff, be creative or find innovations to keep the business relevant. But I think more importantly, their personal well-being has been kind of a concern of myself and my other partners, and just making sure that, they're okay, that they can, they're looking forward to coming into work. They're looking forward to their time off, and just creating a community aspect in the business plate. I think it goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. It goes back to even what Sarah was talking about compassion, and it seems like you're doing such a phenomenal job of doing that with your team. So, okay, well, Sarah, Alex, Derek, thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. It was a very insightful and meaningful conversation, and I know that the other young professionals will feel that way as well. So thank you so much from all of us. We really do appreciate it. I also want to thank the team over at the Chamber of Commerce, Amanda Dirksen, Isabel Shepard, and Shakiba Shayani, the CEO, for all of your support of the young professionals throughout this time and helping us host this virtual event. And of course, last but not least, thank you to our incredible committee. It really shows your commitment to the community, that even in this time, we're bringing together like-minded individuals and young professionals to make sure they're supported. So thank you again to our amazing panelists and to the Chamber. I hope everybody has an absolute wonderful day and can enjoy some of that sunshine out there. Bye, everybody.